Hey class, welcome to Chapter 9, Section 3, the War of 1812, and a number of the events that surrounded the War of 1812. This time period begins with a brand new president. And that president is none other than James Madison. That's right, the father of the Constitution. He follows Jefferson becoming our fourth president. And things are kind of tumultuous during his presidency as conflict continues between Great Britain and France and the United States. If you recall, the Embargo Act of 1807 passed by Jefferson stopped trade with both Britain and France. Well, Madison thought he would mix that up a little bit, and a new law gets passed. Macon's Bill number 2. Macon's Bill number 2 said to France and England, if you stop seizing our ships, we will open up trade with you again. The deal was made to both countries. France said, okay, we will stop seizing your ships if you will start trading with us again. Great. We began trading with them again. Britain says, nope, not going to do it. Now, Britain, though, is upset that we're now trading with France and not with them, even though they could have if they had agreed to Macon's Bill number 2, but they don't. And so Britain's going to become more aggressive in absconding our ships and impressing our soldiers. And because they are being so aggressive at seizing our ships still, we had a bunch of congressmen who are going to be called war hawks and are going to push for America to go to war with Great Britain. A war hawk, is someone who wants to go to war. It's still a term we use today in American politics. If somebody wants to go to war, we say they're very hawkish. They want to go to war. And so this group of men, led by Henry Clay. Henry Clay is the Speaker of the House, and he's really the lead war hawk. He's from Kentucky, and he says, we are not going to be safe as long as Great Britain is in Canada, as long as Great Britain is around. We need to go to war against them because they are seizing our ships, taking our goods, and impressing us, and we're doing nothing wrong. So him and about 40 other Western congressmen are really pushing for America to go to war with Great Britain to defend ourselves against what's been going on, against the ill treatment that they've been giving us. So James Madison is going to weigh all of the options. What do? Do we go to war with Great Britain or not? And finally, in June of 1812, we're going to officially declare war against Great Britain. And this war is going to last 2.5 years. And again, it's over the sailing rights and Britain's abuse of us. Well, America's pretty weak when this thing starts off. There's only 6,700 men in the army. He called up different state militias to help us out. He tries to reorganize to get more men enlisted. Slow going at first, but America will be ready as always to go to war. And a couple interesting parts of this is this Chesapeake area that you see in the top left-hand corner. Here's the Chesapeake Bay right through here. Here's Maryland, Virginia, Jamestown, by the way, and Williamsburg right down here. And so the British are going to begin marching their way up north. They're actually going to hit Washington, D.C. right in here. We'll talk about them in a second. And then to go up a little bit further. And fortunately, a key battle in Baltimore is going to prevent the British from going any further. And Baltimore is defended by Fort McHenry right here. It's one of our stops on the trip. And Fort McHenry guards the coastline. You can see how the cannons here firing out over the bay, guarding Baltimore. And it's this very strategic location that's going to, one of the top ways that the Americans are going to stop the British from further advancing against us. And one really cool story about the War of 1812 and the battle at Fort McHenry is a story about a man named Francis Scott Key. Francis Scott Key, some of you are starting to think, I've heard that name before. Well, Francis Scott Key is a lawyer, and he has come to help get an American soldier out of captivity that the British were holding. this soldier was located out in one of these ships, these British ships out in the water. And so Francis Scott Key goes out to this ship and he's negotiating a treaty, or not a treaty, but a release of this soldier. Well, while he's out there on this boat, it's the heaviest bombardment of Fort McHenry during the entire war. And he's kind of stuck underneath, and shots keep firing and firing all night long. And then come the morning time, Francis Scott Key goes up on the deck of the boat, and he sees the flag, the American flag, still flying at Fort McHenry. And he began to write the Star-Spangled Banner. Oh, say can you see by the dawn's early light, you get the song. And he sees the flag still flying, and right then he's going to write a poem entitled In Defense of Fort McHenry that becomes our Star-Spangled Banner, our national anthem. Written right there on a boat, looking back. And this flag here on the left is the flag that was flown above Fort McHenry that night. You can see that flag today in the Smithsonian Museum of American History. We'll be able to check that out on our trip, and they did a lot of refurbishing and trying to fix it up. But pretty cool stuff right there at Fort McHenry. The song is written by Francis Scott Key. Well, the war keeps going, and one of the real losses during this war is the British are going to burn down the White House. The outside skeleton will remain because it was not burnable, but it was some kind of cement. And but the inside of the house is going to get burned. And the story goes that Dolly Madison, pictured right here, James Madison's wife, Dolly Madison was about to throw a dinner party in the White House. And she's been told, get out, get out. And she's like, well, no, I got to stay here. And the tables were set, food was set. And she was finally forced to leave. Before she left, she saw this painting of George Washington. And she had one of the servants go and cut it out of the frame. It was a canvas. Cut it out. They rolled it up. And because of Dolly Madison, we saved that photo. And that painting today hangs in the East Room of the White House. So she flees, and she's going to be okay. The British, though, come into the White House, and they see all of this food set up for dinner party, and what do? They stop and have dinner. And they eat the food, and then go ahead and torch the White House. So this is kind of the high point of the British before the Americans kind of respond back and really hold their own against this really strong enemy. The war is going to drag on for 2.5 years, like I mentioned earlier. So fast forward now to December of 1814. December of 1814, John Quincy Adams, John Adams' son, is negotiating a treaty with Great Britain. And this treaty is going to get signed on Christmas Eve. It's called the Treaty of Ghent. The Treaty of Ghent. The Treaty of Ghent is signed, ending this war. However, because communication takes so long from Great Britain to the United States, the war keeps fighting. And in January of 1816, that's right, the treaty has already been signed, the war is over, the two nations keep fighting in New Orleans. And America's going to win this battle behind the really strong leadership of Andrew Jackson, who's going to help lead this. It really puts him on the map nationally. So the war is over. America has held its own against a strong nation. Britain's going to stop seizing our ships. So it's really a victory for America. It's the War of 1812. Some have even called it the Second War for Independence. We beat Britain again. We showed them the first time we beat you wasn't a fluke or an accident, but it was legit. So a number of outcomes from this war. One, a number of new American heroes, Andrew Jackson and William Henry Harrison, both phenomenal generals during this war and helped lead America, and they really become pretty famous. Secondly, it gains respect from around the world from other nations. America shows that it is tough, it can hold its own, and we excel. Thirdly, greater sense of national pride, a sense of nationalism in America. People are proud to be Americans following this. It's a really exciting time in America. Fourthly, increased industrialism. Because we hadn't been trading much with those nations, and because during the war we couldn't risk having too many ships out in the seas, we were forced to make our own things, produce our own things. We became more self-sufficient as a nation, and therefore stronger economically as a nation. And then a fifth result would be the death of the Federalist Party. They, of course, our first two presidents, Washington and Adams, were both Federalists, but this war really signifies the end of them. We can talk more about that in class. But a number of significances from this war: new American heroes, greater sense of patriotism and nationalism, greater industrialism, greater respect from foreign nations, and then fifthly, the death of the Federalist Party. The War of 1812 is done. America tells the world the first time we beat the British was not a fluke. We earned it.